The first thing they stole from him was his name. At first he had been Yosef, son of Matan, then Yosef with the hand, then the withered one. Then when people thought he could no longer hear himself being reduced, the hand, not his hand, the hand. Dagon knew what happened when a person became a single story in other people's mouths. Yosef sat near the synagogue wall with his bad hand tucked into his robe, which made everyone look at it more. People are drawn to hidden shame the way flies are drawn to figs split in heat. They try to pretend they are not looking. Pretending gives the look teeth. The day was already too bright. Dagon had come for shade, not holiness. Shade near a synagogue was unreliable, but the wall held a thin strip of it long enough for a man to decide whether he was hungry or only bored. He had been considering a basket near the baker's boy when the crowd changed shape. Crowds do that before important men arrive. They become furniture. Men straightened. Women shifted children behind skirts or in front of them depending on what they wanted seen. Older men adjusted their robes as if dignity had been waiting at the hem. The kind of people who never moved quickly began making quick judgments about where to stand. Jesus entered without enough ceremony to satisfy the room. Familiar by now. Dagon had seen him twice since the wedding. Once from a road edge, where Jesus had been speaking to men who looked as if they had brought questions wrapped around hooks. Once near a courtyard, where a child had followed him with the doomed seriousness of children who decide adults belong to them. Each time, Jesus seemed less like a man gathering attention and more like attention had grown tired of its usual owners and come to sit near him. This irritated Dagon. It also made him stay. Yosef tried to disappear into his own shoulder. Then Dagon knew trouble had chosen him. Not Dagon, Yosef, same thing perhaps. Dagon had learned that trouble rarely respects the person it enters through. Some of the men near the front had already seen the shape of the day. Dagon could almost see the calculation: law, rest, work, healing, accusation, test. Men who could not heal a hand had discovered how useful the hand might be for catching someone else. Yosef did not seem useful to himself, the cruelty of it. His suffering had become a tool in the hands of men who did not have to carry it home. Jesus looked at him, not at the hand first. At him, the difference struck the room more sharply than a shout. "Stand here," Jesus said. Yosef's face emptied. There are commands that free a man and commands that expose him. Often they sound alike at first. He stood, slowly. The robe shifted. The bad hand remained hidden. A child near the doorway leaned to see, and his mother pulled him back without taking her own eyes away. Dagon's throat tightened. He hated public mercy. Public mercy gave witnesses. It changed the story in other people's mouths. Jesus let the silence stretch until it had to reveal itself. Then he asked a question. Dagon would remember the exact words badly and differently across the years. In memory, the question became simpler than speech and heavier than law. Is it lawful to do good when good is needed? No one answered. Silence answered. Dagon looked at the men near the front. They had mouths full of rule and no room left for a suffering man. He disliked them immediately, which made him suspicious of himself. Hatred is easiest when it borrows someone else's righteousness. Jesus' face changed. Not anger like Dagon knew it. Not the hot kind that makes a fist feel intelligent. This was grief sharpened until it could cut. He looked around the room and several men discovered urgent reasons to study the floor. Then he looked back at Yosef. "Stretch out your hand." The room flinched before Yosef did. Dagon felt it, the cruelty hidden in the command if nothing happened. Stretch out the evidence, stretch out the failure, stretch out the thing everyone has used to rename you. Yosef's good hand closed around the edge of his robe. For a moment, Dagon thought he would refuse. He wanted him to refuse. That surprised him. If Yosef refused, the room could remain guilty in a normal way. Jesus would be kind, the men would be hard, Yosef would stay hidden, and everyone could carry the story home unchanged enough to survive it. Yosef obeyed. He drew out the hand. Dagon had expected ugliness. That shamed him, but expectation does not ask permission. The hand was smaller than the other, drawn inward, fingers bent like they were listening to a voice no one else could hear. It looked less monstrous than tired. That was worse. Monsters can be hated. Tired things ask for rest. Further, Jesus said softly. Yosef reached. The fingers opened, not like a trick, not like a bird suddenly remembering sky, slower, terrible in its slowness because the room had to watch each refusal inside the body become permission. Knuckle by knuckle, tendon by tendon, the hand came forward as if it were returning from a country where no one had spoken its language for years. Someone gasped. Then everyone pretended they had not. Yosef stared at his own hand. His face did not become happy. That would have been too easy. First it became afraid, then confused, then young, then old. Then something broke through all of it, and he covered his face with both hands. Both. Then the room understood. Not because a theological argument had been won. Arguments are poor carriers of awe. The room understood because a man who had hidden one hand for years now needed both to hide his tears. Dagon looked away, too late. The sight had already entered him. People moved toward Yosef, not all. Some stayed where they were, trapped by whatever hard thing they had brought with them, but others moved. A cousin, a neighbor, the mother of the child by the door. Someone said his name. Yosef, not the hand, Yosef, he heard it. Dagon saw him hear it. That was almost worse than the healing. Jesus stepped back. This also irritated Dagon. A man who could do such a thing should stand in the center and make everyone admit what had happened. He should demand apology from the ones who had used Yosef as a trap. He should make the room pay for all the years it had spent stealing syllables from a man. Instead, Jesus gave the room back to Yosef. Dagon did not understand that part. Outside, the sun had not changed. A thing like that should alter weather, nothing. The day remained day. Dagon found himself walking because standing still had become dangerous. He moved past the doorway, past the strip of shade, past the place where he had considered stealing bread. His hand had gone to his knife without his permission. You saw Mara's voice. Of course she was there. Women like Mara appeared wherever rooms needed remembering. She stood near a low wall with a folded cloth over one arm and an expression that suggested she had already decided not to let him escape easily. I see many things, Dagon said. Not like that. You know how I see now? I know how you leave when seeing costs you. He should have hated her. He was trying. What do you want? He asked. From you. She looked toward the doorway where Yosef's name continued moving through people's mouths like water finding old channels. Nothing. No one wants nothing. You say that often. It remains true. Maybe you say it because if someone wants nothing, you do not know where to put the knife. His hand left the knife. He had not realized it was still there. Mara noticed because Mara noticed everything that made a room safer or more dangerous. Dagon looked away first. He should have done it privately, he said. Who? Your teacher. He is not mine. Everyone is someone's when food starts moving. Mara accepted that with a small tilt of the head. Why privately? Dagon regretted speaking. A man does not need a crowd for shame. No, she said, but sometimes he needs one for his name. That landed badly, not because it was wrong. Dagon began walking again. Mara did not follow. That was one of her cruelties. She let words do work after her feet stopped. He made it as far as the alley behind the oil cellar before he had to lean against a wall. He put one hand inside his robe where the carved bird rested against his ribs in its cloth. He thought of Ali because the room had said Yosef's name. Names could return. If names could return, then other things might return with them. Debt, memory, guilt. The smoke over Sepphoris had not gone out of him in 20 years. It only got quieter when he was not looking. Dagon pressed the carved bird harder until the bad wing bit his skin. No, he said. He was not sure who he had answered. He stayed under the wall longer than he meant to. The shade of the oil cellar's alley had begun to fail. The rim of light had walked one finger across the dust between his sandal and the opposite wall, and he had watched it without watching it. Then a shadow fell across the rim and stayed. He did not look up. The shadow did not move on. You are slow at deciding to leave a wall. Dagon knew the voice. He had known it since the market with the brother and sister and the water skin that tasted of berries. He had known it under the canopies at Cana. He had heard it an hour ago in the synagogue saying Yosef to a man who had been the hand. The voice did not arrive with thunder. The voice walked. Dagon did not stand. The wall was holding too much of him up. Jesus crouched. The way a working man crouches when he wants to be eye to eye with another man's trouble without making the other look up. His sandals had picked up the same dust as Dagon's. There was a small fresh cut along the side of his thumb. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The carved bird was still in Dagon's fist. He had not put it away. The bad wing pressed into the soft place of his thumb. He waited for the question. What is that? Whose was it? Why does it hurt you? The kinds of questions a man asked when he wanted to fix something quickly so he could move on. Jesus did not ask. He looked at the bird. He looked at Dagon's hand. He looked at the lane. Then he said, Sepphoris. Dagon stopped breathing for a count of 3. I know the smoke, Jesus said, softly enough that the syllables did not have to be picked up by anyone passing. I was small when it happened. I do not remember it. The men who came back from it lived above us for the rest of my growing. Some of them never put their hands down. Not what Dagon had expected. A teaching, maybe. A correction, forgive, let go. The fire is not yours to carry, something that would have armed Dagon's anger and made escape easier. Instead, the man crouched beside him said some of them never put their hands down. It was a witness, not a sermon. Dagon's fingers loosened around the bird. He did not know he had done it until the bad wing stopped pressing into the soft place of his thumb. Jesus did not look at him while he loosened. The mercy. A man who has just released a thing he has held for 20 years does not need a face to perform release for. He needs a man beside him who has the decency to look at the dust instead. After a while, Jesus stood. Nothing more. He did not bless Dagon. He did not press a fig into his hand. He did not ask him to stand or walk or follow. He left the lane the way he had entered it, at a working man's pace, with the dust of the day moving away from his heels. When Dagon finally looked up, the rim of light had moved another finger across the dust. He stayed under the wall a little longer. Then he put the bird inside his robe, against his ribs, and stood.